This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Covel. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. My guest today is Bill George. He's the former chairman and chief executive officer of Medtronic. Bill has seen a lot. Teaches at Harvard. His book, True North, been a bestseller many times over. We discuss his newest edition today, and we go into a lot of different names that you will recognize, from Mark Zuckerberg to Warren Buffett, to name a few. The key part of this conversation is leadership, taking from Bill insights, morsels, nuggets that hopefully we can all apply. And I think the most important thing when you listen to Bill, positive attitude. I'm not going to tell you his age. You can go Google his age, but he doesn't sound his age. If we could all sound as good as Bill sounds, as sharp, as clear, man, I can only hope I'll be there. Without any further delay, let's jump right into my conversation today with Bill George, discussing his book, True North. You are a man who has been studying, living, teaching leadership for a long time. And here we are, and now you know a little bit about my background, beyond a guy who's written a bunch of quant investing books and running this podcast for 10 years and talking to a ton of people that you probably know. But as we think about leadership today in a world, especially if we just think about America for a moment, that's pretty fractured, pretty tribal, pretty polar, misinformation from all sides, from both sides, hardcore politics these days where if you scratch your head for a second, you say, man, this doesn't look so good for the future. Truth and untruth in this kind of a climate. And you can tell me if you disagree with my description of the climate, but in this kind of climate, how do you see leadership?
That's why leadership has to change. Look, I grew up in those so-called stable eras of the 70s to 90s. That's when I was CEO in the 90s. But I can tell you, leadership is much more difficult today. If you think about the last 20 years, when most of our Gen Xers, millennials have grown up, we've careened from one crisis to the next, from 9/11 to the dot-com and Enron crashes to the financial meltdown in '08 to now COVID, Russia invading Ukraine, inflation, supply chain, you name it. I think the world is much more difficult. That's why we need the new generation of leaders to step up. I think it's time for the baby boomers to step aside and turn things over to the next generation who knows how to lead in this kind of environment, because that's all they've experienced. And they have to be very flexible, very adaptable. You can't have a 5 to 10 year strategic plan. You can have one, but it doesn't mean anything.
You're talking about baby boomers stepping aside. You're firmly a baby boomer, aren't you?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You don't sound like one, though. I got to tell you, I really love when I can have somebody on this podcast who people probably have a hard time guessing your age by voice alone. Let's just go off on a tangent for a second. Why is that? Why you? Why do you not sound your age?
All the people I teach and mentor are all younger generations. So I've spent a lot of time with them. I have all my life, but particularly in the last 20 years since I started teaching, that's where I spend my time and really understanding what the issues are and how they think and why they're so well prepared to step into this crisis. It's not the world that we were teaching at business schools 20, 30 years ago. And it's got to change, maybe even a lot of business schools today. It's got to be totally different. We've got to figure out how to adapt to crisis. We've got to deal with very diverse people. They're maybe our most valuable employees. And I think we're also seeing an employee revolution. I think that's a good thing. I think we've ridden off the backs of our frontline employees for far too long. So this is a huge trend change. It's not going to change for the next 10 years. It's going to be turmoil. These are the leaders we need who can be flexible and adaptable.
But boomers don't want to release that grip yet. Do you think so?
I think it's time. I think we have to have them step aside. First of all, you mentioned the political turmoil out there. I see business and many other institutions in society, healthcare, medicine, military, as kind of the bulwark against the political chaos. So I think it's really up to the leaders in these institutions to step forward and do the right thing. I don't think you can just sit back today and look internally and manage your business. That's what happened to Bob Chapek at Disney. He said, "Oh, I'm not going to worry about anything in the outside world." Wow, I don't know what world he's living in at 62 years old. But in today's world, people are looking to you to take a stand, whether it's climate change or diversity and inclusion, caring for your employees. If you don't, you're not going to make it. So I do think it is time for the boomers to step aside.
So as I tell you out of the gate here, I'm Gen X. And if I describe myself as a skeptic, you're not going to be surprised, right?
That's okay.
There's a key word that I like that you are using. Very important word. I think this would probably be a word that, if true, if a Gen X guy believes in this, then they're on your side. And this is the word authentic. Authentic is a terribly important word, but I guess these days also, not only is it the challenge, and I want you to either correct me or expand or whatnot, not only is it a challenge to kind of find the authentic, it's also a challenge to find people that are faking it.
Actually, I think you can smell the phony in about 60 seconds. I think most Gen Xers and millennials can, and they aren't going to follow. They want somebody that knows how to lead, not being the smartest person in the room, but lead with their heart, that has real passion for what they're doing. Sounds like you do. Compassion for people and the courage to make bold moves. I think the old line that you can fake it to make it is proven to be totally flawed. People are not going to follow you unless they know you care about them and they know you're real. It's not just about money, fame, and power. It's about people that want to make a difference in the world. And that's the big change with the new generations. I think too many in my generation were engaged with how do you get power? How do you have a big title? How do you get the money? How do you get fame? People in the newer, younger generations realize that's kind of a flaw. Why are you chasing that? I want to have a decent life. And I know a lot of the boomers rip on millennials saying, oh, they want to have a good life. I said, don't you?
Let me bring up an example of an individual in a company. I've had so many people on this podcast over the last 10 years, so many interesting people. Again, many people I'm sure you know. And I was trying to kind of like wrap my arms around who is Bill. So I was a little surprised after catching some highlights here and there, thinking, okay, where does Bill fit on the spectrum? And then I come across this example, and I think this is just a great example to bring up of Mark Zuckerberg, which I thought was fascinating because he's a guy that when I watch the Social Network movie, I don't necessarily walk away thinking he's a bad guy. It actually seems to be an image rehab from my perspective for him. But you are pretty tough. You are really tough on Mark Zuckerberg. And I should offer a personal bias that I have. The very first time, the only time so far in my life, as a guy who's written 7 books and over 1,000 podcast episodes, the only time in my life that I've ever been censored is on Facebook. And I'll be frank, the reason I was censored was I linked to some CDC report about some particular COVID issue. It was not controversial. It was on the CDC website, and I linked to it, and I assume some Facebook bot caught it. They didn't like whatever it said, and I got negated for a period of time. At that moment, I said to myself, why am I on this platform? What am I doing here? This is weird. I've never been censored in my life. I'm American. I believe in free speech. It was quite interesting. I thought to myself, I would really like to dive into your perspective on Mark Zuckerberg because on the face of it, tremendous success. He's one of the wealthiest people in the world. Clearly, a lot of people work for him. He's made other people billionaires. It's an interesting case, isn't it?
Oh, I think it's a fascinating case. My co-author, Zach Clayton, and I, who's a 37-year-old millennial, same age as Zuckerberg, debated this. We did a crowdsourcing of some 300 people. And boy, I tell you, the younger generations are totally turned off. But let me say why. I watched the Social Network, too, the first time. I was inclined to say, look, he's only a 19-year-old kid. I'll cut him some slack. Then I watched it the second time, and it's all proven out. In effect, he got rich too soon, and his goal is to get richer and richer. He has no grounding in a clear set of values. He does not build Facebook on a set of values. So that bot that caught you, that's kind of random stuff. After Cambridge Analytica, it was clear that they had done something wrong. He found out about that in early 2016. What's he do? Before the election, by the way, nothing. Okay. It leaks out 2.5 years later. That's just one example. I think Mark has not been clear about his values and his purpose. His purpose seems to be how many billions of people can I get on Facebook? But is it a meaningful dialogue? Contrast that with Satya Nadella at Microsoft, who is the real deal. He owns LinkedIn, of course, and he gives LinkedIn total freedom. I know the people there well. There, it's very credible, and it's a very serious kind of social media. I love social media. I use it all the time. I'm posting 5-6 times a day, but I only respond to, people call me the F word. I just blot them out. But I'd love to have serious dialogue with people in Saigon or in Berlin or wherever in the world. If you don't build your company, your organization on a clear set of values, as Jim Burke of J&J said, you'll swim in chaos. I think Facebook today is chaos. Now, frankly, he's going away from the social network. He's now going to try to emulate TikTok, which my 10-year-old granddaughters use.
It's interesting, though, given your place at Harvard, your background. He has some background at Harvard, too. I don't think he finished, but I suspect he's donated money or tried to. I don't know. And it's interesting conflict. He can't like the fact that somebody like yourself is so openly putting these faults out for everyone to see.
Yeah, I'm sure he can't. But, a good leader today builds a team around them. No one's smart enough to build a big organization on their own. They just don't have a group of sycophants like Mark does. He pushed out Sheryl Sandberg, who I thought was doing a terrific job early on until he pushed her aside after Cambridge Analytica. But I think you need a team at the top to run any organization. And he hadn't done that. He's a one-man show, if you will. And it is man, because he surrounds himself with a lot of products. Look, the guy is brilliant. But I think my whole point of writing this book is it's not about how brilliant you are, how much money you have, what your title is. It's really all about what are you trying to accomplish in your life? There are baby boomers that have done amazing things. Look at Paul Pullman and his total commitment to sustainability and climate change. And Indra Nooyi is an older baby boomer, but she is now totally committed to nutrition and healthy foods. Mary Barra is transformed General Motors. Now, these are all baby boomers, but to me, they're role models of what we want to see for the next generation. They take on something that's really important, and then they go for it. Mary Barra went after, zero emission, zero congestion, zero crashes. Impossible vision, but at least it's where she's guiding General Motors. And I know her people. That's a whole new General Motors than the old guard is purely oriented towards how do you maximize shareholder value. That's what I am upset about.
Let me get into a couple terms that are very important to you, including the title of your book, True North. True North, a moral compass. What is your moral compass? But why don't I let you explain it a touch more? Go ahead also and define the North Star. Okay, what's your purpose to make the world better for everyone else? Let you define these two a little bit more. And feel free, because it made me think, what is my North Star? I have an idea to share with you.
First of all, your true north is the essence of who you are. It's your values, your beliefs, and the principles you lead people by. It is all the things that bring you satisfaction, fulfillment in your life. That sounds easy to figure out. It's actually not. You have to probe your life stories. You have to look at the time when things didn't go your way. Hey, when things are going your way, you think you're better than you are. When they aren't going your way, you really understand who you are. That idea of true north really points to your North Star, which is that fixed point in the sky. That's the purpose of your leadership. Now, it took me a long time to figure this out. I might have told you 25 years ago, my purpose was to be CEO. That's not a purpose. My purpose is to help develop people so they can reach their full potential. When I came to Medtronic, I was no expert in medicine. I knew a lot about technology, but my real expertise was helping people develop into a great organization and pull together around a common purpose of restoring people to full life and health. That's what I brought to the party. I didn't bring, how do we do this procedure for cardiac surgery or neurological? So I think your purpose is your North Star, and that's a fixed point in the sky. You look up the Big Dipper. I look up every night when it's not cloudy and see that up there. If you can stay clear about that and be who you are. See, a lot of people are afraid, Michael, to be who they are because they're afraid they're going to be rejected. Actually, today it's the other way around. You can be rejected if you're a phony.
I'm a free agent, so I don't think I've had a job for anybody since I worked in the Circuit City warehouse at age 19. I'm lucky in that sense. As long as I keep having collegial conversations with people like you and there's a mutual respect and it seems to keep working. But I like having this kind of free agent perspective.
Yes, but you also are meeting the needs of your listeners with an authentic program where it's the real deal. You're not just kind of a showman putting on a phony show. You're not P.T. Barnum. That's why I think people come to your podcast. Why would I come to your podcast when I thought it was all phony? So yeah, you're the real deal in terms of what you're talking about on these shows. And that's why people want to listen. That's what people are looking for today. I don't know about the old guard because they're probably sitting in their fancy houses down in Florida. No, seriously.
I know. I agree with you. I agree with you. Let me share with you. Okay. We bring up the idea of the true north, and it gets me thinking. And just to share, look, you're a professor. You can offer feedback, criticize, say good, bad, whatever. But thinking about the true north concept, the North Star, my North Star, thinking, well, okay, most of my adult life so far has been about certain content around a certain investing strategy. That has been fascinating for me, a chance to meet so many people, kind of like this detective career to figure something out. That's been so fun. And then there was the not calculated, all of a sudden, I'm in Saigon and I'm not leaving because I've got the ability to be wherever I want to be. And so I chose to be here. And so I think to myself, in going through your world, my North Star, okay, I will always have the North Star of loving the content that I produce so far in my investing world, my podcast, etc. But I have to say, my North Star today really, truly is to fix what America did in Vietnam, because it's not fixed. It's not fixed at all. Now, of course, the Vietnamese are doing great. The country is exploding. It's doing fabulous. But it's the American perspective, the American understanding of Vietnam, you can imagine causes someone like me, who's been here for a long time, to just pull their hair out, whatever amount of hair I have, which is still some. So anyways, your work really got me thinking about that. It's like, I have to admit to myself, I wake up every day and I think about that. And I'm working on a project towards that end, but that drives me and I can't stop. I can't stop.
That's fantastic. But now, Michael, we need to know the truth. Can you tell me the truth from Saigon? So I'm sitting back here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I know the truth. If you don't tell me the truth, I'm going to switch you off. But if you can tell me the truth about what the reality is, you started out by telling me the reality of how the Vietnamese look at Americans. I don't think Americans really understand that. They think, oh, we fought a war. That was our problem, not theirs. They didn't want a war. But anyway, that's a whole other story. But I think the truth for any leader is essential today. I don't care what role you're in. We got a lot of commentators on cable TV that don't tell you the truth. So I'm not going to spend any time listening to them.
The truth is a funny thing, especially today. And I don't care whether someone is coming from the right or left. I think the truth, it used to be, by my observation as a guy going to high school in the 80s and then college, okay, if you looked at for example, American politics, left and the right, there might be disagreements, but we could generally find the truth. And today, wow, what happened?
You find the truth through people you trust, and people that know are going to tell it the way it is, painful as it may be, honest. You don't find it by just searching for weird commentary out there, which there's plenty of, including social media, by the way. That was my comment about Facebook. So yeah, I want to know where I can find out. I'm searching for the truth too all the time. I'm searching the truth. Is it what emerging leaders really want, and how are they going to lead, and what are their issues? And I'm trying to help. My whole mission in writing this book is for emerging leaders to step up, to give them a clarion call, to have the bold courage to step into the role and do it, because we need you. And we need you to be truthful, to be transparent, because we need to trust you. If we can't trust you, no one's going to follow you.
I want to take you back in time a little bit. You mentioned early in your career, Defense Department, late 60s, whether that time period or the 70s or the 80s, give me a moment early in your life, some mentor, some influence. Was there an early shaping from a particular memory of a person, something that happened that put you on a path?
Oh, I've had some wonderful mentors over the years. I started the consumer microwave oven business in 1969 and 70 for Litton Industries. And I had a mentor who, frankly, had never been to college because his father stole his college savings for gambling losses. And he was just wonderful. He taught me about business on the ground, what it's like. How do you make the sale? How do you serve people? How do you work with people? And I never forgot that. A guy named Bob Bruder. I learned from Bob so much. He was about 15 years older than I was. I learned so much about how to lead people. That's why I feel so passionately that leaders today have to get out of their offices, forget about all those meetings, get out on the front lines and work with your people. Find out what's going on.
Was that Bill wisdom from that time, was it timeless? Is it timeless to today for you?
Absolutely, it's timeless. When I went to Medtronic, I told you I knew nothing about medicine. The way I learned it is I went, met doctors 6:30 in the morning, put on the greens, and went and saw 700 procedures in the operating room. That's how I learned about what was going on. I learned all the good, the bad, and the ugly about what Medtronic was doing and what we needed to do better. I wasn't trying to sell anyone anything. But today, I would say if you're in the retail business, get out of your office and get out into your stores, find out what's going on, check the bathrooms. If you're in the airline business, why don't you fly coach in your own planes instead of flying in some private plane? You'll figure out very quickly how well people treat you if they don't know who you are, if they don't recognize you. But I think that's where the action. I spent a lot of time with the innovators at Medtronic back in the labs. I got so many ideas from that. That's why I worry a little bit about it. I think remote is great, but there are times we need to be together and really kind of interchange.
Check the bathrooms. That's an interesting thought. Was that directed at a particular company or individual?
Well, there's some retailers who, very, very large food service people where the bathrooms are pretty cruddy. My only point is if you're in the business, go back in the warehouse, find out what's going on. My only point, you've got to get out on the front lines and know what's happening. If I want to know about quality, I didn't go to the chief quality officer of Medtronic. I went and had lunch with some of the production workers and went down the production line. They'll tell you what's going wrong. Mr. George, we can't produce a quality product because this equipment doesn't work. You need to help us. We need to get better equipment. And they'll tell you what's going on. Same thing with the salespeople that tell you if you got a problem with your product, you're going to hear it more from them. You're ever going to hear it from the quality department.
I guess there is a certain authentic aspect to the idea that you are so open to go to an issue that maybe people think at a high level leadership conversation, hold on, we're talking about the bathrooms. And you're like, yes, hold on, we are talking about the bathrooms.
Yep, because it's symbolic of, by the way, where do you take your kids when you go to Burger King or McDonald's or Wendy's? You stop by the side of the road and you take them into the bathroom, you find out pretty quickly. That is symbolic, like you say, of the greater issues. A lot of times people see the corporate headquarters and think everything is fine and they aren't in touch with the real world. And by the way, another passion of mine is we're underpaying our frontline people. The last 30, 40 years, we've been downgrading their compensation. We look at people as a cost. People are your asset. That's the greatest asset. When I go on an airline, the reason I fly Delta is because they treat me so well. I fly United, not so well. I never saw an executive. I'm not seeing Ed Bastian from Delta or the CEO of United. I'm seeing the frontline people. That's my whole impression. You go into a restaurant, it's the same thing. It's how you're treated. And that's what people need to understand today. That's what leaders need to understand if they want to be successful.
Side tangent by me, but you bring something up about the airlines. And of course, you're having a conversation with a guy who's in Asia. And okay, if I get on ANA or I get on Emirates or I get on Singapore Airlines, the last thing I'm ever thinking, if I can at all possibly avoid it, is to ever step foot on any American airline ever again. Because right now it does still seem like America's a little bit of a captive audience when it comes to airlines. The American airlines inside the continental states don't have to really worry about how great ANA and Singapore and Emirates are. Do you think at some point in time that quality that I see outside of the states will put pressure on U.S. carriers? Because the U.S. experience is quite dismal compared to a lot of the upstart international carriers.
By the way, 100% correct. Why can't we have Singapore or Emirates or NA here? Because we closed the borders. But to the extent those airlines want to go global, they're having to face this competition. But I think that gets back to, again, a larger problem. Your job as a leader is to inspire your people. You're not the one that's face to face with the customer. Your job as a leader is to inspire them to serve customers. It's not about maximizing shareholder value. And the only way you maximize shareholder value is to serve your customers better than your competitors and do it really well. That's what motivates your employees. I went to Medtronic and said to our employees, look, guys, we got to make $3.91 a share this year. They'd look at me like, what are you talking about? I thought we were getting into business of trying to restore people to full life and health. That's our business. And if we do that well, yeah, the shareholders will be highly rewarded as they were at Medtronic, but only because we had things to save people's lives. That's what matters. Employees, that's where they live. They don't live to make money for the shareholders, I can tell you. And that's the great misnomer of the last 30 years.
That dovetails into, maybe this could be framed as a controversial topic, but it dovetails into the idea of social issues or controversial issues. How do you think about that from a leadership perspective? Because, again, it's pretty easy to see inside of America, things are pretty polarized. I have been surprised in the last 10 years, given how polarized America is, and we can all look at the voting totals, it's usually about 50% on either side. I've been surprised at how many political, and you kind of hinted at this earlier, but how many political stances large corporations have taken, because it seems unusual, at least as a Gen X guy, never seeing it before, really so obvious. And then today it is very obvious. And with a highly divided nation, that seems risky because a lot of these issues, people could fairly argue them from either side on many issues.
Leaders today have to take a stand on behalf of their company's mission and values. Look, you can't speak out on everything, but if you don't take a stand, Chip Bergh, who I feature in my book in the last chapter of The Moral Leader, takes strong stands on behalf of gun safety. He doesn't call it gun control, he calls it gun safety. And I said, why do you do that, Chip? Because that's very controversial. He said, Bill, 60% of my customers are female, and a lot of them are in school, and they're young girls, and they're scared. It's not safe. So, yeah, I have to speak out on behalf of creating a safe environment for them. He took a stand. He said, abortion is a business issue. We have to take care of our female employees. Every corporation I know is doing that. They may not be as outspoken as he is, but he's taking a stand on behalf of his customers and his employees. And I think you have to do that. That's where Bob Chapek at Disney missed the boat. Did he not understand that he's trying to move 10 or 20,000 people from California to Florida, and they pass a bill, depending on whether you want to call it parental vice bill or don't say gay, that a lot of those employees he's telling to move might be gay, and they might not want to go into an environment where they didn't feel fully included. That's very controversial, but I think you can't just hide in the weeds anymore. You expect to be out there. In Minneapolis, 2 miles from where I'm sitting right now, a man named George Floyd was murdered 2 years ago. If any CEO in this town, we got a lot of big company CEOs, didn't take a stand on that issue, not just saying supporting their Black employees, but saying, here's what we're doing to support higher levels of diversity and to hire more diverse employees and make them feel fully included in our organization, they wouldn't survive. They couldn't survive as heads of their companies because the employees demanded it. That's the employee revolution that's taking place. Employees have agency. And even Howard Schultz, who created the company that was the employee-oriented company, that company Starbucks lost sight of that. And now they got a bunch of union drives that Howard's trying to ward off. They should have thought about that when they weren't taking care of their baristas.
When you bring up some of these issues, the thought that starts to cross my mind, if large corporations that both political sides buy products from, if they've got, for example, a difference of opinion, no one is going to disagree with you about George Floyd. But a lot of people might also say after George Floyd, gosh, how many thousands of young Black guys have been killed in our inner cities and what's happened to them? And so I think sometimes it's where we put the concentration that I think frustrates either side. It seems sometimes we don't seem to be consistent in our messaging. That's frustrating for me too, is trying to be an honest observer of the American situation, which is a complex, messy place, as you know.
You may see it better than those of us sitting in the middle of it, but I can tell you that that issue you raised here in Minneapolis is a huge issue. All those people being killed.
Yeah.
That's a big concern.
Chicago, Philadelphia, Baltimore, it's terrible.
I was with a close friend from Chicago. It was right in the inner city. We were just talking about this last week. I can tell you, though, that it's not sufficient to say, look, I support all our Black employees. Really? What are you doing about it? What are you doing about these issues? we expect you to do more than just good words. We don't buy all this stuff that comes out of the PR department. We want to know, what are we actually doing about it? Are we providing jobs? We have a family foundation that's providing tremendous numbers of scholarships, not directly, but indirectly, to a guy like Alan Page, who's in my new book. And he's got this education foundation for poor kids that otherwise wouldn't go to college. Most of them are BIPOC. They're Black, brown, Asian. We're called upon to do that. Meanwhile, Jeff Bezos, second richest guy in the world, he created a $500 million yacht. He got the Dutch to do it in Rotterdam, and he can't get it out into the harbor because it won't go under the bridge. So he's trying to tell the Dutch, I'm of Dutch descent, and he's telling the Dutch, take down your bridge. What world does he live in? The Dutch are saying, to hell with you. We're not taking down our bridge. Take down your boat. My point about that, Michael, is how many kids could have gone to school for that $500 million if he turned that into a scholarship fund, like some people have?
You brought it up, and I'll share with you. It is terribly interesting being a, quote, white guy, Gen X entrepreneur type guy, choosing to be in a place like Saigon for a long period of time. And it is terribly interesting to look across the pond, the Pacific pond, and observe America having its nonstop, continual race conversation, typically a two-race conversation. And I'm living in the midst of 100 million Vietnamese. It's a piece of the puzzle that I think, if it's ever imported into America, to think beyond the two conversation and to bring in the Asian side of the equation more, it's fascinating because it's changed me. You can imagine, look, you've been around the block, you know what's up, but it's definitely changed my perspective as to watching the American debates and conversations.
Sure is. But hey, you look at what Asians are doing in this country and how many companies they're running. I'm including in that South Asians as well from India. It is stunning what they're doing. It's amazing, fantastic things. So yeah, we should open the door. I'm quite upset that we are limiting legal immigration. We should have many more immigrants. That's one of the reasons there's such job shortages. We aren't letting any legal immigrants in. My students from Harvard Business School come here to America for 10 years to get their education, and then they get sent back home. It's ridiculous, And trade, I'm a big believer in trade. I don't believe in tariffs. I think we got to work together. Trade is the best antidote to war, the best antidote to war we can have. And if we want to avoid war with the Chinese, we just need to continue trading them. So they depend on us and we depend on them. It's have mutual interdependency. And by the way, that's why you run an organization.
Let me shift it to another name, a name that's kind of in my world a little bit. I respect the name, and I respect his partner's name, Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. If I could just spend all day watching their conferences they would have every year, and you can find most of these things on YouTube going back decades, to watch these two guys, I mean, it's just like sage stuff. They're both fascinating guys. Have you had a chance to meet Warren Buffett?
I know Warren Buffett. I had dinner with him. He's an amazing guy and very down to earth, very sincere, very real. He doesn't take 2 + 20 out of your investment either. He just builds up the enterprise, and look what he has done. A stunning guy. But yeah, I feature him in the book because he's an amazing leader, and I want people to look at him as a role model. He's still living in the same house he bought in 1956. I'm not expecting everyone else to do that, but he's got a lot of money. He's getting Bill Gates to give it away for him because he said, I'm better at making money than giving it away. He is the real deal. And I wish more investors were like Warren Buffett. I think they would make a lot more money. He's a long-term player. I can tell you that. He's got one of the people I feature as an emerging star is a woman named Tracy Britt, who was one of my students at Harvard Business School. And she went to work for Warren. She learned so much. And now he supported her going out and starting her own investment firm. This is the way it happens. And so, yeah, I wish we had more Warren Buffetts. And Charlie Munger's great, too. I know Charlie.
Can you share anything behind the scenes? Can you share anything where a nugget, your observations, you're a keen observer of people, so you get a chance to know both of these men, highly respected guys. And again, if people have not seen their YouTube clips of their annual shareholder events and you're still sane and you've not seen these, you have to go watch immediately. Is it just straight up? I mean, is there anything about them individually or personally that you observed that was unique? Or is it just this matter of fact, this is how it is attitude?
Wisdom. It's wisdom accumulated with not chasing money, fame, and power, but really the wisdom they've accumulated. I'll give you an example of Warren's wisdom. I was supporting Indra Nooyi when Nelson Peltz was trying to break up PepsiCo into two companies, one beverage and one food. Warren had a very astute observation. He said, I think PepsiCo ought to support the shareholders who are going to stay, not those who are going to leave. He feels the best time horizon for investment is forever. So he's got a big investment in Apple. Okay, he's made $120 billion on Apple. He's a long-term looker. He bets on leadership. See, I would think, unless you're really an astute day trader, which obviously I am not.
I don't think anybody is, except for a couple huge names, and that's it. Maybe JP Morgan, Jim Simons, but there's very few.
That's true. For the average person like me, if you want to make good investments, bet on leaders that you trust, that are the real deal. That's why you could bet on Warren Buffett. But, there are a lot of other people out there, the real deal. I think Tim Cook at Apple is the real deal. You mentioned Satya Nadella at Microsoft. I think these people are fantastic. Mary Barra's got a much tougher problem at General Motors, but I think she's the real deal. So I would much rather bet on those people and invest in people like that are going to do it for the long term.
I can't say that I made the same kind of money as Mr. Buffett did off Apple, but I must say there was something about Apple, even in the early days. I think I've been using a Mac nonstop since 1990. There was something in the early days just about this guy Jobs and his belief, and I wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah.
It attracted me. And I remember, oh my gosh, my MBA program, so many guys on their PCs back in the early 90s. Oh, are you using that Apple product? That's a toy. It's not like these PCs over here running DOS. What are you doing over there, Mr. Covel? It's so funny now. You run forward a couple decades. Not that I'm making a prediction or I thought any of that was going to happen, but it is fascinating how this guy was able to develop and push that company so hard. And then again, as you mentioned, to transfer power successfully.
He is a visionary genius. Tim Cook is not that. He's the guy that's putting, if you will, the scaffolding and building the foundation. That's what I tried to do at Medtronic. We had a founder named Earl Bakken, who is a visionary genius, but somebody had to build the company. That was my job, to see where it could go and how to broaden the base beyond pacemakers into other products. That is what Tim Cook has done and built it out. To me, that's what excellent leaders have to do in all walks of life. I think, though, you said you were attracted to the image of Steve Jobs, whether you knew him or not. I think people today, young people today, want to work for a company that stands for something. That's why Unilever did so well under Paul Bowman, because he stood for something. That's what they want to say. Do we have a real purpose here? It's great that we have these inventors like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg, but then somebody's got to come in behind them and really put the scaffolding under it.
Interesting that you brought up the criticism of Jeff Bezos. I don't know anything about his philanthropy. I don't know what he does in terms of charity or anything like that. But you did get on him pretty hard for the big old yacht. I don't think there's any shortage of wealthy people around the world splurging on things. But do you see a guy like Bezos? Do you think he's doing a great job at many of the issues that are important to you?
No, I think he did a great job building an incredible company on Amazon. I think it's fantastic what he did. Just amazing. The best thing that happened, this is a little cynical, but he and his wife, Mackenzie Scott, got divorced and she wound up with $38 billion. She's given away $13 billion the last 2 years, $13 billion to help organizations. Organizations I work, like the YMCA of the North, are beneficiaries of that. A Global Citizen Year that gives people a gap year experience overseas are the big beneficiaries of these gifts. It's fantastic. My philosophy, you can't take it with you. It's not he who dies of the most toys wins. You can't take it with you. So if you've been blessed to make a lot of money, give it away. Make a difference. Pick a cause. You can't do everything. Pick a cause. My cause is leadership. My wife's cause is looking at the whole person in healthcare. Give your money away and try to make a difference. I mean, we're a mid-sized foundation. We're not big like these guys, but yeah, look at Gates has done. Fantastic contributions he's made to healthcare and education.
When you're beyond your core philosophy, your core work, when you're speaking with young people about leadership, and let's say we're talking inside the continental American states, and let's say people don't really have any kind of outside experience beyond that, how much do you, in conversation, do you share with or push young people the idea of getting a wider experience? I'm not necessarily saying to go live in Saigon for 10 years, even though it's a great experience. How do you get people to get outside of their comfort zone? How do you get them to understand that? Because it is the natural inclination to be like, hey, hold on, I'm comfortable in this place. I don't want to necessarily push my boundaries.
Well, I can tell you, maybe you should move to Saigon. That's where you grow. Get around people, your environment's totally different, where you're the exception. You're not the majority. You're the exception, just like you said, Michael. I encourage people to do that. I remember spending in 1984, I spent 10 days in China. So I wasn't spending it in Beijing. I was out looking at various industrial operations for my company, but talking to kids in the schoolyard and watching the farmers go to market and walking down to the market. We lived in a, believe it or not, one-room Japanese apartment for 3 weeks back in the mid-'70s with my 2-year-old son and my wife because we wanted to experience real Japanese life. The greatest learning I ever had, frankly, was moving to Belgium when I was president of Honeywell Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And being with people in so many different cultures where I was the minority. I didn't speak French. I was trying, but I wasn't great. It was just a great experience. And so I encourage young people, and I always say to CEOs, if you got stars, put them out in Vietnam or put them out in South Korea or in Czechoslovakia in a totally different environment where they really have to learn. That's where you learn about yourself. And you start to really reflect on it. When you're in a nice, cushy American suburb, you don't learn as much. When you get out with people that are very different than you are, boy, that's when you really learn. So yeah, if you want to groom executives, I remember Andrew Nui said there'd never be a CEO of PepsiCo and live outside the United States. And of course, her successors from Spain. So I think those experiences are invaluable.
1970s Japan, 1984 China. I'm jealous.
That was early on, by the way.
I'm jealous. Even a place like Vietnam, I would have loved to have been here like in 88, 89, 90, would have just been all bicycles still and just a completely different environment.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
One of the places I learned, I'm sure you've done it, but most Americans are not, is go have street food.
Oh, yeah.
Right on the street, they'll prepare lunch for you. And it's great food. It's more a great cultural learning experience because that's how you grow. You put yourself in environments different than you're in. How else can you run a global company today unless you're really in touch with the needs of people? Hey, and not all experiences are pleasant. I went to Russia for the first time in January of 81. When Reagan had just become president. He was rattling the sabers. It was kind of a scary experience. It was not a pleasant one. When I'm walking through the airport and I've got 50 soldiers pointing machine guns at me, that was a scary experience. And having my bag searched when I went to a hotel, and it was a decent hotel too. You come back and somebody searched your bags. That's just life.
In the last 10 years, I've had a lot of nice experiences in mainland China. Obviously, things are a little political today, but again, just some wonderful experiences there. I think for the audience, and you know this, and I'm not trying to keep the Vietnam conversation going on too much here, but they're dramatically different places. I think sometimes an American living inside America who has not traveled Asia can look at the map, they can look at the style of government per se, and they might say, oh, China, Vietnam, same. Not the same. Not the same at all. Some genetic footprint is similar, yes, but very different cultural places, very different thinkings. So it's, again, back to your point of you describing the many different places that you've been until you go out there and you test the water, so to speak. How do you know? How do you know to walk away with these experiences? Look, I never read David Halberstam's The Best and the Brightest until I got to Vietnam. So how do you know?
I told you I was in the defense department during the Vietnam War and this domino theory, and they're aligned with the Chinese. And I remember the first time I went to Vietnam, I went to Hanoi, so obviously the heart of the North. And they said, why did you think we're aligned with the Chinese? We're scared to death of the Chinese. Look at our border up here. We need American support. And by the way, we like all these entrepreneurs coming here and creating companies. It's a great thing for our economy. I think until you get out and talk to people, you don't really appreciate. You develop kind of theories about people, including the Chinese, by the way. I think Chinese are wonderful people. And that's why I say I think we can learn from them and trade with them. They got 5,000 years of history. We got 250 here.
When you get on that plane, right now, it's not exactly easy to travel to China, but I would highly recommend that when people can get on a plane and take a trip to Shanghai or Beijing or Shenzhen or Guangzhou, do it. You get there and you're like, hold on. Is that a McDonald's? Is that a Starbucks? You start to realize, hold on, we're all kind of in this big basket together. There might be these political differences at the high levels, and those are important, and they can be problematic. But most of the time, most people around the world want the same stuff, They want peace, they want stability, they want a family. We're not all too different.
You said it perfectly. We're all in this together. And any leader today needs to get firsthand experience and appreciating that and understanding it. You can't just get it unless you get out and really talk to people. And that's been my whole message to emerging leaders. Really get out and live with the people. Don't take a job in the head shed in strategic planning. Get out and drive a truck for UPS or a bottler's truck, as one of my students did for PepsiCo. That's where you find out the real world. That's what I learned as a kid working as a 15, 16-year-old in a wholesale drug warehouse. My supervisor was making, I think, 10, 15 cents an hour more than I was. He had a wife and 2 kids at home. He said, you don't want to do this, Vera. But that's where you learn the real world. And if you don't learn that, if you're above that, and you just come up through the finance route, Michael, you will not be a good leader today. So get out in among the people, just like you have.
I shared it with you early. My last official job was working in the Circuit City warehouse. Me and 5 black guys slinging big screen TVs in the warehouse, trying to kill each other by throwing TVs at each other. But it was an experience. I realized, well, this was fun at a certain age. I didn't want to keep doing it, but it was a great experience.
And in fact, you remember it all these years later, says it made an impression on you.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I could pick your mind about all kinds of topics, all kinds of names. People are going to have to check out your book and really dive in. I've only taken you across a couple names in your book. There's so much information here. The book, True North, Leading Authentically in Today's Workplace, is the Emerging Leader edition. Bill, written with you and your co-author, Zach Clayton. Very cool stuff. I appreciate you taking some time today. I hope I didn't surprise you too much with my questions.
It's been very stimulating, and I sincerely do hope that all the leaders listening to this podcast, which you do such a great job on, will go out and get the book, because I let other people tell their story. I don't try to tell it. I let the Warren Buffetts and the Satya Nadellas tell their story, and I think you'll learn a lot from these people.
And for people that want to check out your world, you are easily found. Type in Bill George, your personal website's there, all your books. If they can't find you, then I think they should probably retire, go do something else. I mean, it's actually quite interesting because you would think about it with the name Bill George. It seems like 2 common names, but you own the search rankings for it. So if you search for Bill George, you find Bill George.
There was a Hall of Fame football player named Bill George, about 10 years older than I was. But anyway, I appreciate this dialogue because I think you really got to the heart of what leadership is all about today. Maybe not yesterday. Today and tomorrow.
Bill, thank you again. And if you have future books coming up at some point in time, which I'm sure you will, because it sounds like by your voice, you're going to be around for a long time, please keep me posted on future work.
Thank you, Michael. And I hope to get to see you in Saigon in person.
Absolutely. Bill, you take care.
Thank you. Bye now.
I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.